Because I told him the truth. Most people don't tell the truth. They're afraid of the truth, right? But I like the truth.
The man who once kept a journal of every single day he spent with Barbra Streisand is now writing the hardest entries of his life. James Brolin, stoic, private, proud, is facing what may be the final act in a love story that's captivated Hollywood for decades. Recently, Brolin stunned producers by saying he couldn't commit to upcoming projects, even ones with seven-figure offers. Those closest to him know why. After nearly 3 decades of marriage, the fairy tale has hit. Cruel chapter. Barbra has been quietly dealing with a devastating diagnosis, one that is slowly forcing them both into an emotional reckoning. Friends say their separate bank accounts, which they long kept to preserve, independents are finally merging, not for financial planning, but to deal with mounting medical expenses. And yet it's not just about money, it's about time. Time that may be running out. On the heels of their 25th wedding anniversary, the couple now faces a battle neither fame nor fortune can shield them from. Sources close to the family say that James has been by her side nearly every moment, refusing even a $2 million film role just to remain at home. This is the man who, despite being once known for his quiet toughness, now cries behind closed doors. And this is the woman who, for all her commanding stage presence, now leans on James in ways she never imagined. Their love story has weathered celebrity chaos, egos, and long separations, yet nothing has tested their bond quite like this. James Brolin wasn't always the charismatic, silver-haired leading man we know today. He was born Craig Kenneth Brolin on July 18, 1940. During a heat wave in Los Angeles so severe it nearly kept his father from reaching the hospital, his dad Henry, a no-nonsense building contractor, made it just 12 minutes before James was. Born Henry ran his household with a tight grip, daily chores, strict rules, and weekly behavior reviews. His mother, Helen, once had dreams of being in movies herself, having worked briefly as a film extra. But she never told James. She didn't want the sparkle of Hollywood to pull him away from school. Still, it found him. James was a quiet child, his voice strained by bouts of asthma so severe that at 7 he spent over a month in the hospital. But there was something behind his silence an engineer's mind, a dreamer's heart. By 9, he had dismantled and rebuilt his father's wristwatch. Teachers marveled at his mechanical genius. But that trajectory shifted entirely the day he saw James Dean in East of Eden. Something clicked. He became obsessed. For months, he secretly rode his bike 17 miles to Griffith Park to practice Dean's walk, his voice, his attitude. In his bedroom, 73 James Dean magazine clippings were hidden behind a poster. He used the money he saved from his paper route over $202 buy a camera and started directing neighborhood kids in silent films. When Dean died in that tragic car crash, James didn't speak for 11 days. A teacher, sensing his potential, had submitted one of his short films to UCLA. It won an honorable mention, judged by none other than Nicholas Ray, the director of Rebel Without a Cause. That changed everything. James had a purpose. But purpose doesn't erase insecurity. He was so shy he vomited before every audition. In 1960, a studio told him his name had to change. Brolin sounded too German, too long. After 7 meetings resisting it, he finally gave in. They named him James after his idol. His father didn't speak to him for a year. His mother mailed his new headshots to relatives, trying to justify what they saw as a betrayal. 4214. Nights James couldn't sleep without pills. Success didn't come easy. His early career was patchy and humbling. He landed small parts, sometimes uncredited, on television. One of his first was a forgettable role on Batman, where he played a bank teller. He impressed the director just by how he dropped a bag of fake money and soon found himself cast again as the Eraser, a goofy villain who erased clues with a giant pencil. He broke 3 ribs doing his own stunt, but no one noticed. Later, he was cast again by mistake a 3rd time because the producers didn't even remember he'd already played 2 roles on the same show. At that point, Brolin was essentially homeless, lived in a beat-up 1958 Chevy, parked on studio lots, and showered in the gym at Fox. But things only got worse. In 1967, after landing a lead in The Cape Town Affair, a film he begged the studio not to release because of its poor script and problematic messaging, the movie flopped spectacularly. While visiting his mother in the hospital, he got the call he'd been fired. Fox, adding insult to injury, demanded he return $11,400 in salary. For 18 months, he couldn't get a role. He took work as a mechanic in Van Nuys, fixing the cars of people who had no idea he was once a rising star. Then came the twist. One of those cars belonged to a Universal Studios executive. Impressed by Brolin's humility and work ethic, he offered him a screen test. That screen test changed Brolin's life, led to his role as Dr. Stephen Kiley on Marcus Welby, MD, a breakout hit that aired from 1969 to 1976. Audiences fell in love with his portrayal of the handsome, motorcycle-riding young doctor. In 1970, he won an Emmy. 2 Golden Globes followed. The show tackled progressive issues like cancer, mental health, and even homosexuality, controversial at the time. But Brolin pushed for realism and emotional honesty. He wanted his work to mean something, and for the first time it did. By the late 1970s, Brolin's range had grown far beyond his heartthrob doctor image. He took on darker, more psychologically complex roles, including a disturbed Vietnam vet in Skyjacked, and later, a man possessed in the Amityville Horror. That film terrified him even during rehearsals. He once claimed his pants fell off, chair by themselves while reading the script, and he took it as a sign. It grossed over $80 million and cemented his place in the horror genre. Off-screen, things weren't always smooth. He clashed heavily with co-star Margot Kidder, but the tension worked for their characters. In 1985, he poked fun at himself. With a cameo in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, playing a parody of Pee Wee Herman as a suave action hero, around that time Brolin also starred in the TV drama Hotel, which ran for 5 years and gave him not only career stability but also a chance to direct. The show featured new guests each week, and Brolin's performance as the polished hotel manager earned him more Golden Globe nominations. It also brought someone new into his personal life, Jan Smithers, who guest starred while Brolin was navigating a rough divorce. But even that relationship, though warm, was not destined to last. Then came Barbra. Barbra Streisand's life had been anything but charmed, adored. She was born in Brooklyn in 1942, the daughter of a school secretary and a beloved. A teacher who died when she was just 15 months old. Her family was left with $250 and had to move in with her grandparents. Barbra grew up not only poor, but painfully aware of how different she looked and sounded. Her stepfather was cold and once told her he'd break her spirit. At 16, she left home, carrying a single, taped-up suitcase with 2 pairs of shoes and a handful of records. She was homeless, sleeping on couches and rooftops, but kept perfect school attendance by studying in diners and libraries. At night, she practiced her singing in stairwells and subway stations, chasing the echo of her own voice. She never had a formal lesson. At one point, a friend named Barry Denon convinced her to record 3 songs using an old reel-to-reel machine. She had to stand exactly 27 inches from the microphone. When they played it back, he dropped his coffee mug. He had never heard anything like it. She got a gig singing at a nightclub for $18 over a weekend and was promptly fired from her usher. Job for moonlighting, but it didn't matter. She had taken her first step into show business. Her voice began turning heads. A producer once told her she had $1 million voice and a 5-cent face. She refused to change. No surgery, no accent training, just raw talent. In 1962, with a fever of 103 degrees, she auditioned for I Can Get It For You Wholesale and stole the show. Her character wasn't even meant to have a big number, but on opening night, she sang it 3 times due to audience demand. The press went wild. In the decades that followed, Streisand became a phenomenon. She beat Frank Sinatra at the Grammys, redefined beauty standards in Hollywood, and took full control of her own television specials, even directing and editing them herself. she sang. Through pneumonia, performed for empty rooms. It's created albums that executives thought would flop only to have them sell out. When she starred in Funny Girl on Broadway and later in film, she faced immense criticism from investors who thought she wasn't pretty enough for the part. She proved them wrong, performing it 867 times and earning an Oscar for the film adaptation. She was meticulous, proud, and unyielding, yet also deeply sensitive. She once cried when her sprinkler broke mid-performance, the audience thought. It was part of the act, but she was just trying to finish the song. Her rise to stardom was not the result of luck, it was resilience, sheer willpower, and unmatched talent.
Oh.
And yet, even with all the fame, she remained guarded in love, careful, deliberate. That's why it took James Brolin 3 proposals to finally get her to say yes. They were from 2 different worlds, but the same deep hunger for authenticity drew them together. Now, in this fragile chapter of their lives, the strength that once carried them through showbiz storms is being tested in the most personal way. Barbra's health has become the center of their world, while they've remained private about the specifics. Insiders confirmed that the diagnosis is serious, potentially life-altering. James has canceled nearly all professional engagements. Their home has grown quieter. Visitors say he spends most of his time tending to her needs, cooking meals himself, playing old jazz records they both love, and sometimes just sitting beside her in silence. He's writing again, but it's not scripts or memoirs, it's letters to her. Some he reads aloud, some he doesn't. They talk about their early days, about the night she sang in that thrift store dress, and about his James Dean obsession. They laugh, they cry, and they hold hands. The man who once lived in his car is now the anchor for a woman who once slept on fire escapes. Their story, shaped by struggle, grit, and fame, is entering its final stanza. But in that silence, there's a kind of peace. James Brolin isn't just saying goodbye to Hollywood roles or red carpets. He's preparing for the hardest role he's ever played, the loving, steadfast partner to a legend, in the quiet fight that fame can't shield you from. And in doing so, he's proving that real love, the kind that endures decades, diagnoses, and doubt, isn't about the spotlight. It's about what happens when the lights go out and someone stays anyway in the United States. Barbra Streisand's performance in Funny Girl was so powerful, so perfectly timed, and so emotionally authentic that it earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress, an almost unheard-of achievement for a debut film role. It was her very first movie, and yet she tied with the legendary Katharine Hepburn, marking the only time in Oscar history that the Best Actress award ended in a tie. The film earned 8 Oscar nominations overall, and from that moment on, Barbra wasn't just a Broadway star. She was a bona fide movie star. Her unique blend of vulnerability, strength, and charisma was undeniable. Years later, Funny Girl would be preserved in the Library of Congress as a national treasure. A testament not only to the film's cultural importance, but to Barbra's once-in-a-generation impact. But she didn't rest on musicals. Risks, big ones. In 1972, she signed on to star in What's Up, Doc?, a chaotic screwball comedy with Ryan O'Neal. Initially, Barbra hated the script. She even told reporters the movie would flop. But behind the scenes, something rare happened. The studio listened to her. Her character was rewritten to be lighter, more fun, and more dynamic. O'Neal took the straight man role, and the chemistry worked. Against all odds, the film exploded, becoming the 3rd biggest movie of the year. Barbra was paid $500,000 more than her co-star critics were. Stunned by her comedic timing, What's Up, Doc? Became a classic, often ranked among the best American comedies of all time. The gamble had paid off, and once again, Barbra had defied expectations. The following year, Streisand dove into more emotional territory in the way. She starred opposite Robert Redford, portraying a fiercely passionate Jewish activist alongside his quiet, charming writer during a politically turbulent time in America. The film's budget was modest, just $5 million, but it grossed $50 million, solidifying its place as one of the most poignant romantic dramas of the decade. The performance earned Barbra yet another Oscar nomination, as well as a prestigious Italian Film Award. But perhaps more lasting than the movie itself was the song, the title track. Streisand sang herself, became the biggest hit of 1974, selling over 2 million copies, would eventually be inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame. By then, Barbra had begun to feel the pull toward greater control. She didn't just want to act, she wanted to shape the entire vision. So in 1972, she launched her own production company, Barwood Films. Her first project was Up the Sandbox, an odd, surreal movie about a bored housewife escaping into wild fantasies. Wasn't a commercial success, but critics respected its courage and feminist undertones. Roger Ebert wrote that she was playing a character who truly didn't care what people thought. A rarity for female roles in Hollywood at the time. Then came 1976 as A Star is Born. Barbra didn't just star in it, she produced it, and the results were staggering. The film's love theme, Evergreen, which she co-wrote, became an instant classic. It won the Oscar, a Grammy, and a Golden Globe. Streisand made history as the first woman to win an Oscar for composing music. That song is still considered one of her most iconic. Her performance earned her yet another Golden Globe, proving once again that she could reinvent herself with each role. But none of her success came without struggle. In 1983, Streisand tackled her most ambitious project yet, Yentl. It took her 15 years to get it made. 12 studios said no. When one finally said yes, she was given a $14.5 million budget. She directed it herself, becoming the first woman to write, produce, direct, and star in a major studio film. She wore chest bindings, worked 20-hour days, and led a male-dominated crew of 168, many of whom placed private bets on her failure. But she didn't fail. Yentl grossed over $40 million. Still, the industry refused to accept her as an equal. One Academy voter admitted he didn't vote for her simply because she was a woman. At the time, only 0.5% of studio films were directed by women. When Yentl was met with critical praise, the Golden Globes created a one-time category, Best Director in a Musical or Comedy, just for her. It was the only time the award existed, Streisand asked during her acceptance speech. Why? She hadn't simply been included in the regular directing category with the men. Her question became so well known that it was later cited in congressional hearings as evidence of institutional gender bias in Hollywood. But she didn't stop. In 1991, she returned to directing with The Prince of Tides. It took her 26 script drafts and 3 years of development. She shot in hurricane-damaged South Carolina, hiring locals who had lost their homes. The film made $63 million and earned 7 Oscar nominations. This time, the Directors Guild finally recognized her. She became the first woman ever nominated for their top honor in the Guild's 44-year history. But the Oscars once again snubbed her. The backlash was fierce. When it was revealed that 94% of Oscar voters in the directing category were men, the industry had no choice but to listen. In 1995, Barbra shattered another barrier. She directed and starred in her own HBO concert special, which went on to win her the Directors Guild Award for television directing, the first time a woman had ever won in that category. The production involved 11 cameras, 125 crew members, and 223 camera setups. She planned every moment. What made it even more powerful was that this return to live performance came after a 27-year hiatus. In 1967, she had forgotten lyrics on stage and had been haunted by that moment ever since. Stage fright kept her away from the spotlight for nearly 3 decades. But she overcame it and turned it into a triumph. Special drew 26 million viewers and grossed $93 million. At the award ceremony, Streisand pointed out that only 3.7% of TV directing jobs went to women. Her win came 25 years after her first confrontation with the Directors Guild. Her personal life, however, wasn't always as victorious. In 1963, she married actor Elliot Gould, and in 1966, their son Jason was born. Barbra canceled a $1 million concert tours when she found out she was pregnant. She adored being a mother and often brought Jason to work. But the marriage was strained. Gould struggled with gambling and substance issues, selling their belongings to feed his addictions. Barbra feared for her son's future. They separated in 1969 and divorced 2 years later. Her focus returned to work until the night of July 1st, 1996, when a blind date would change everything. That night, James Brolin and Barbra Streisand met for the first time. It almost didn't happen. Both were in their mid-50s, emotionally battle-scarred and wary of love. Streisand hadn't been in a serious relationship since the early 70s, and Brolin had recently emerged from his second divorce, burdened with over $1.4 million in debt. Their mutual friend, Linda Bloodworth Homason, had tried twice to set them up, and both had canceled. In fact, Brolin was supposed to meet another woman that night but changed his mind at the last minute. Nervous, he took a Valium. Barbra expected. A rugged man with a beard but was surprised to find him clean-shaven. He was prepping for a role. They talked for 6 straight hours, and they soon realized they'd grown up just 3.44 miles apart in Los Angeles in their very first 30 seconds. Barbra looked at him and asked, "Who messed up your hair?" She didn't mean it cruelly, but it struck a chord. His ex-wife had never once commented on his appearance in 11 years. That remark stuck. He almost left, but something in her eyes made him stay. That evening ended at 3:27 a.m. with Barbra asking for a lock of his hair. She kept it. It's now framed in their home beside a handwritten note. 17 minutes after meeting him, Barbra felt something she hadn't felt in decades connection. Over the next 2 years, Brolin proposed 3 times. The first, just 87 days after they met, happened in a hot air balloon over Napa Valley. He gave her a 3.9-carat diamond worth $250,000. She said no. Her past heartbreaks had made her wary. The second came on New Year's Eve in 1997. He played her favorite childhood song and proposed in front of 14 friends. Again, she declined. The third time it worked. On March 15, 1998, at a quiet picnic in Malibu, he handed her a 24-page letter listing 98 reasons why they belonged together. What he didn't know then, what she only revealed in her memoir years later, was that she had been secretly engaged to someone else when they first met. She broke it off after their 5th date. They married exactly 2 years after their first date on July 1st, 1998. The wedding was a $1.4 million affair at Streisand's Malibu estate, with 37 private security guards, a no-fly zone, and NDAs carrying $250,000 penalties. The ceremony began precisely at 8:47 p.m., the time they first met. 15,000 white roses and orchids were flown in from 4 different countries. Guests included Oprah, Tom Hanks, the Clintons, and Marlon Brando. Streisand wore a gown with a 27-foot train. Brolin wore diamond cufflinks and a tailored Armani suit. She wrote a song for the event, "I've Finally Found Someone," performed by a children's choir from her foundation. At the reception, Brolin gave a speech with exactly 273 words. She had it framed. He said, "Every night is a new adventure. Sleeping is a waste of time. I can't wait to see her again in the morning." He had suffered from insomnia for 27 years. She became his cure. They had spent 642 nights together before the wedding reading poetry, doing crosswords and sharing memories they'd never told anyone else. He even learned a piano piece called Barbra's Lullaby, intentionally misspelling her name. As an inside joke, John Travolta later revealed that Brolin had kept a journal of every day they spent together, which he planned to give her on their 25th anniversary. That milestone arrived in 2023,